Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming to BOT's Bicycle Safety Webinar. Today, we'll be exploring resources for you to have safe, successful, and enjoyable bike trips. Please mute your microphones in case you get muted, and please use the chat box for comments, questions during the presentation. We'll also have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. My name is Karen Rojas. I am the program coordinator for Move More for WorkWell NYC. Our presenters are going to be Omar Barrios, the Deputy Director, Driver and Truck Motorcycle Safety Programs and Safety Education and Outreach. And then later on, you also see Omar Arias, who does Promotions and Outreach Coordinator, Cycling and Micro Mobility Unit. The next slide. So a little bit about WorkWell. WorkWell is the worksite wellness programming for all city employees. And we have 5 different areas that we work on, which is Move More, which is a physical activity, Eat Well, which is healthy eating, Take Action, which is primary care prevention, and Be Well, mental well-being and resilience, and last but not least, Project Build, which is health equity. And next slide. Today, we'll be talking about bicycling in New York City, which helps with transportation, recreation, exercise, socializing, and many other benefits that people get from cycling in New York City. Bicycling in New York City for your safety. Rules of the road. These are the things that they're going to talk about in the webinar, which is rules of the road, important safety tips, commuting and you, e-bikes, and much more. Next slide. All right, so now I pass it on to Omar, and he'll be taking the mic.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Omar Barrios from the Department of Transportation in New York City. Don't let the long title fool you. I'm a former cycling instructor and here doing a lot of the rules of the road that we're going to be covering for your safety today. I wanted to start out with a little poll before we get started. You know, we have a little prompt that should be popping up on your screen just to get some results and hear about our audience today. The question is, how often do you ride a bicycle in New York City? Little multiple choice, weekly or more? Are you on a monthly basis? Are you a casual rider a few times a year? Or are you currently not riding a bicycle in New York City? A little background, you know, I've been doing some safety education and outreach for many years, but this is one of my favorite outreach events to do. The answers that we have here, most of you, 44%, do not currently ride a bike in New York City, followed by on a weekly basis, and then a tie for third place on a monthly or a few times a year, and that's okay. You know, here at Safety Education and Outreach, you know, we promote the safe, effective, and efficient use of all the transportation modes. So everything you see in this photograph is what we cover at our unit, whether you're walking, driving, biking, protecting your children, you know, on 2 wheels and your 4 wheels. We always want to make sure that we share the road safely with all those around us. So this picture might be a little bit intimidating for those of you that don't regularly ride, but if you do become a better rider today with today's webinar, you know, we could go over some of the rules that we should be following. So on our next slide, we have the primary directives when it comes to being out on the roadway. You know, a lot of people that we see sharing the road on 2 wheels. I have to start off by reminding everybody that you should always ride in the direction of traffic. You know, sometimes we transfer our pedestrian skills and we think that if we go onto oncoming traffic that we could see the cars coming towards us, but that only guarantees that a driver will run into you a lot faster. When we ride safely in the correct direction of traffic, the driver will see you in advance and be able to maneuver around you in traffic safely. There is no chance to prevent that crash when we go in the opposite direction. Also, we need to always follow the primary stop lights and stop signs whenever we see them. You know, they're not suggestions for anybody else driving on the roadway, and they are requirements to keep everybody safe. You know, usually that means that someone else has the priority on that intersection that you're approaching. Thirdly, you know, pedestrians always should be yielded to. They have the right of way. Think about how if you're riding your bicycle, you know, you're at a slightly faster speed than a pedestrian, so you're gonna always want to yield to them and prevent any possible misunderstanding. So we always want to make sure we look out for the pedestrians that have the right of way. Um, in addition to these rules, you know, here's a couple other reminders about how to ride. You know, only children are allowed to ride on the sidewalk by the law. You know, think about how, you know, the sidewalk has a limited amount of space. It's full of, you know, other pedestrians, senior citizens, shopping carts, dog walkers, baby carriages. There isn't enough room for a full-size adult to be riding on the sidewalk. So we always want to remember to stay off the sidewalk. Additionally, you know, we have our helmet program. I'm pulling it up right next to me, our Vision Zero helmet program that we are very successfully throughout the city from spring through fall. You could come out to one of our council member events and be able to learn how to wear a helmet properly and provide one to anybody who shows up. You will get fitted and you'll learn and receive that helmet at one of our events. Even this weekend, we have one event coming up, and we'll mention the details of how to find additional events later on in this webinar. Um, Additionally, you know, we have our third little icon here. Be aware of your surroundings. You know, you are constantly going to be in motion. You're going to be able to stay in control. We have there in the little graphic earbuds. You know, a lot of people, you know, try to listen to music or read their favorite book or podcast. You know, you should always be aware of your surroundings. And when we use earbuds or earphones, some of them might be noise canceling. We might not be able to hear a possible warning or siren that's approaching us. We want to make sure that always ride carefully. By law, you're only allowed to use one earbud if you do ride with earphones. So it's best to always stay attentive to what's going on around you. On our next slide, you know, I want to give a little update. Some of us, you know, might be frustrated when we see those bicyclists going through a red light. You know, how dare they? They should be following the law. Well, there was an update to New York City local law in 2019. In 2019, local law 154 was updated. So if we look at this photograph, we will see the cyclist is going through a red light, but a couple things have to be followed for you to be able to go through a red light. First of all, it has to have a pedestrian signal. If you look on the left-hand side underneath that 4th Avenue sign, you'll notice that the pedestrians are allowed to cross with the white walking symbol. We want to make sure that we slowly go through this red light. It doesn't mean you get to race right through and blow right through that red light. We have to make sure that there's no other vehicles or anybody else going through that intersection, and we yield to those pedestrians. Additionally, you'll notice that there isn't a bicycle signal. The little second graphic in the right-hand side, you'll see there's a little green light with a bicycle. Whenever you see a bicycle symbol in your traffic signal, that is the indication for the bicyclist to be able to go through that intersection. If you ever see a red bicycle, you are not allowed to go through that intersection. Just like that red light above on the pole is telling the cars to stop, you do as well. But we also want to remember a couple of safety tips. So thank you for going to the next slide. We want to make sure that as we start to travel in traffic, you know, there's a couple things we have to be mindful of. Remember that every vehicle has blind spots. The larger the vehicle, the bigger the blind spot. So here we do have the graphic showing you that on a truck or a bus, you know, the blind spots could be very larger than you would think. You know, they only have those small mirrors on the sides. They may or may not have cameras or audible signals that are functioning properly. So we always want to to assume that the driver cannot see you. You want to make sure you stay visible. On the lower left-hand corner of this slide, you'll see an actual group learning how to ride with Bike New York. They do have classes for you to improve your riding for free. We did have the Five Borough Bike Tour recently, that big event that shut down a lot of the city roads. All of those fees collected in sponsorships, they pay for the free bicycling program. So I want to welcome anybody to look them up and be able to get a free class near you. On our next slide, another thing I like to mention for those that are riding too close to the parked cars, we have to avoid the door zone. This is one of the most dangerous crashes that could happen to a cyclist. What I always like to mention to people, pretend you're riding with an invisible friend next to you. Make sure you have enough gap between that parked car and where you're riding your bicycle. You want to ride 4 to 5 feet away from that parked car in case that vehicle door suddenly pops open and swings in front of you. If you can see in this photograph, the fear is that, oh, I'm going to get hurt by the door or the glass, but the physics, you actually get pushed into the next lane. So this is why this is one of the most dangerous crashes that could happen to a cyclist. If we ride away from the parked car, we could avoid that crash entirely. So just a reminder for those of you that are in the vehicle, you are responsible as a driver and a passenger to always look over your shoulder before you open that door. If you've ever ridden one of those yellow cabs with the video screens, use your opposite hand to open the door. So if you're seated, you want to use the opposite arm to turn your whole body around and look over your shoulder before you open that door. On our next slide, our next tip is about intersections and navigating our ride in our busy roads. On the top left corner, we have a mixing zone where the protected bicycle lane suddenly, stops being painted green because we have a turning vehicle. We never want to squeeze in between a turning vehicle. We always want to shift and yield and signal and stay in control of our bicycle. In the middle graphic, if there's a stop sign, be mindful that the truck driver is trying to do the right thing, and we never squeeze next to a truck. We want to keep a safe distance behind the truck in case they have a sudden stop or delivery. And on the bottom left-hand corner, we have something called an offset crossing. This is also known as a pedestrian island. You might have seen these on the bigger, wider arterial roads or avenues in Manhattan, for example. When we have these pedestrian islands, we actually shorten the crossing distance for those broad and wide streets. For example, a senior citizen might have a refuge if they can't cross over many lanes of traffic. But as a cyclist, we have to be mindful that there are pedestrians that might be crossing in the crosswalk, getting onto the curb. So please proceed with caution whenever we are approaching an intersection to avoid an incident. We want to make sure that we look at this slide, being aware of the size of the lanes. There are a lot of great bicycle routes and lanes and protected greenways, but sometimes we might not have a section of our route. This is the same photograph, believe it or not. Sometimes we think that, oh, I could fit right next to the parked car, but in fact, it might not be wide enough. The second photo on the bottom shows you how close the vehicle will stay within their yellow line and squeeze you into that door zone. So whenever possible, take the whole lane. If there's no bicycle lane, you're entitled to use that entire lane. And I always like to tell people, never sacrifice your safety for the convenience of somebody else. Think about how you want to make sure you continue to ride safely and get to your destination. Take the lane in this situation so that they have to clearly go around you, crossing the double yellow line and staying at least 3 feet away from you. On our next slide, we want to continue talking about the best way of getting around. I always like to brag about the lifetime membership to Citi Bike. And everybody asked me, oh, really? I could get a lifetime membership? I said, yeah, buy a bicycle and maintain your own bicycle. It's a very simple machine. So I want to go to the next slide and talk to those that have their own ride, and a couple reminders. What do I need to have on my own bicycle to make sure that it's safe? In New York State, in order to have a bicycle to be completely street legal, you have to have a working brake. And I'm talking to those, messenger style bicycles that they're racing through the streets. You have to have at least one brake to be able to stop the bicycle. You also have to have a bell to signal your presence. There's no whistling, there's no screaming at people. You ring that bicycle bell and it's the universal symbol that a bicycle is approaching. As soon as it gets dark, from dusk until dawn, you have to have lights, but you have to have uniform lights, a white light in the front and a red light in the back. That way, anybody that sees you approaching, just like the subway, when you see those white lights coming in on the tracks, it's coming towards you. When you look down the tracks and you see red lights, oh, it's already past you. And that way, other drivers can see you, that you're possibly going to be stopping up ahead when they approach from behind, or a pedestrian at the intersection sees the flashing white light and they say, oh, that bicycle's coming towards me. I have to look out. Whenever possible, use reflectors. There's reflectors that you could add to your clothing. They're already incorporated to your shoes or to your bags. There's a lot of reflective materials that you can use to make sure that your presence is seen. On our next slide, I just want to talk about commuting. A lot of people have a longer ride and might not realize that you could possibly bring in the bicycle. Always check on your different transit operators to know what the rules are. Use the best advice on those transit operators, avoiding the rush hours or using the service gates for entries and exit. Making sure you don't ride your bicycle on the platform. Make sure you carry your bike down the stairs, and always to be around your bicycle and be aware of any possible restrictions. You'd be surprised to know that, yeah, this bicycle that folds up, it could be put in a backpack and nobody would ever know that you're a multimodal a transit rider. So beware of the restrictions and depending on where you travel. Next, want to remind people to keep your bicycle safely. Here is one of the DOT bike wrap hoops. I always like to remind people that your lock is a security. It only buys the thief time. So when I see people using just a cable lock that's really thin and flimsy, you might want to double down to tie those tires to a heavier chain lock. There might be a U-lock for convenience and for carrying, and use a combination. You could have more than one lock on your bicycle depending on what type of bike you have. Remember, there are components that could also be stolen, like the tires. If you look at this photograph right there, it would take me 20 seconds to remove that front tire and walk away with a brand new tire. So making sure you have component locks, your seat posts, your handlebars. It uses a special key to be able to remove those parts and keep the bicycle intact. Then the next slide, always check your tires. Anybody here that hasn't changed their sneakers and tries to walk outside today in the rain and you start slipping and sliding, that's what ends up happening when you don't look at your tires. You also have to keep them pumped up at the right tire pressure. Read your sidewall to know what that tire pressure should be for the type of bicycle that you have. We want to make sure that the correct tire pressure makes it easier for us. It also prevents a lot of headaches later on when you get a pinch flat or you have a flat tire. Oh, I didn't even look at my tires that morning for that weekend ride. Now you have no weekend ride. You have to go to the bike shop and get it fixed or be pulled over trying to figure it out. All right, on our next slide, I want to also remember that in addition to your tires, your air, you check your brakes, you check your chain. It's called the ABC Quick Check. It doesn't take that long. Here, we just see a quick way of cleaning off your chain, especially if it gets dirty, especially if you ride daily. There's a lot of debris on the roadway or a lot of dirt or the rain catches everything. When you have the right equipment, a quick rag and a quick degreaser, the right equipment could help keep your bike riding smoothly, and make sure you lubricate it properly. Right about now, everybody's trying to go to the bike shop. It's super busy. Good luck getting an appointment if you want to start riding this weekend. But it's something you could do at home. It just takes a couple minutes. A lot of people find out how easy it is and could really maintain their bike for years to come. All right. Lastly, For those of you that are already in the 21st century using an electric bicycle or other degree, device, this is something that we saw especially pick up after the pandemic. I want to talk about a few things to keep in mind about electric bikes on our next slide. I want to remind everybody that there are 3 different classes for e-bikes. The first one is a pedal assist. These are the ones that you would see on City Bike that are gray. They go only up to 20 miles an hour. There's a class 2 that has a throttle similar to a motorcycle. We see a lot of our delivery workers using those. There's also a class 3 that is only allowed in New York City that you could throttle up to 25 miles per hour. When you increase the speed, think about how fast you're going. At 25 miles an hour, you are required to wear a helmet. In case of a fall or a crash, you want to make sure you're protected. On our next slide, I just want to remind everybody, of what we're doing out there. We do a lot of work with our electric bike user community, a lot of micro mobility, a lot of different devices out there. I just want to remind everybody about some of the requirements. Some people always ask, oh, can I ride this on the sidewalk? No, you may not. Just like a bicycle, there's not enough room for everybody, especially if you're going a lot faster. You want to make sure you always yield to those pedestrians. And we always have to remind everybody of the difference between a bicycle and what is considered a moped or motorcycle. First off, does it have pedals that work the bicycle? That's an electric bicycle. If it doesn't have pedals, then that's a moped or other device. So be mindful of additional regulations you have to follow if you are going onto a moped or motorcycle. Can I ride it on the bicycle lanes? That's something that we have to be mindful of. If it's an e-bike, yes, you're allowed to use the bicycle lanes because of the speed that you're traveling at. If you're traveling faster than what I mentioned before, you have to realize that you are not allowed to share that bicycle lane. So be mindful of that also. On our next slide, I want to just show you a quick grid. This is located on our e-bicycle page online. A lot of people have questions about these different devices and, specifics. The one thing that you'll notice on this grid that we have to be very careful about is the speed. Notice how when you go to motorize, you can go a lot faster and there are additional requirements, those yeses underneath the yellow columns. Make sure you have your driver's license, make sure you are registered with the DMV, make sure you have a VIN number, and make sure that we are operating them safely. And that goes for the e-scooters too. A lot of people just buy whatever they see online, not realizing the speed that they can travel at, and the fact that it's not even allowed on our roadways. Look at the weight limit of under 100 pounds for some devices. So we want to be mindful of what to look out for. I like how it says, can I ride on bridges? And it says yes, but then you have to read the small print. Only in the vehicle lanes for those mopeds. So be mindful of how you travel, and where you travel if you're on a bicycle lane or on the regular lanes. Are you allowed on the greenways? Never, because of the speed. We want to make sure the greenway is a safe environment for those that are traveling at slower speeds. And the helmet requirement, recommended for the slower speed e-bike, but definitely required the faster you go. Okay. On our next slide, I want to talk about, what we hear about in the news all the time. A lot of buildings have also been mentioning the dangers of charging your electric bike. I want to remind everybody about the approved batteries. Make sure that they're compatible chargers. Make sure you don't put them next to the heat source. And do not leave them charging for longer than necessary. No overnight charging, and always have an exit strategy in case of a fire. One thing that people don't realize, the fire is different. It is a chemical fire. Water fire extinguishers do not work on lithium ion batteries, so you must call 911 for assistance. This is why it's a tragedy. People think they could put it out, that they're going to be effective when they need a lot of help to get this under control. On our next slide, I'll be able to pass it over to my colleague Omar Arias to talk about the infrastructure.
And I think we had another poll, right? Start. Yeah, I guess we could start with a question. What kind of bike trips most appeal to you? And we have the options of commute in, connect into public transit, recreation and exercise, all the above, or none of the above, or other. Okay. Yeah, hopefully some of you are able to participate. I see the highest preference right now is recreation and exercise. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining. Again, my name is Omar Arias, and I work in the cycling and micromobility unit here at New York City DOT. Can go to the next slide. So a few things that I'll be covering in this webinar would be talking about a few things that DOT has uh, in our toolkit when we are designing New York City streets, and some of the infrastructure that we have in place so that we are meeting demand, but also creating like safe environments, safe spaces on the road for people to ride. And also we are considering other mode users, as I mentioned, micromobility with this as well. So some things that we consider, so our team does bike lanes, but we also like expand into other types of different infrastructure as well as other teams in the agency. It's one of many tools to calm traffic, assign um, roadway space for each road user. It's a good kind of visual cue to reduce speeding. And with doing so, we are also just planning for all modes, not just bikes. As you can see here in some photos, we have public plazas. So pedestrians are taken into consideration. Loading needs whenever we are working near commercial areas or even just some residential areas where we know they may get a lot of deliveries. These are different things that we consider when we are planning or designing streets. So as you can see, there's like bike racks, plaza. Sometimes we're able to do public art. And in some cases, like in Queens, we have shared streets. So just a space where we have all modes just intersecting at one place. Over the years, we've seen cycling grow. We have a few old numbers, but kind of in the last decade, we've seen about a double in ridership through our community health surveys that I think are studied about every year. In addition to, we also have like 3-year data. We see that there are about 610,000 commuting trips in New York City by bike a day. And so we are seeing a lot of people get on bikes and ride in. In addition to that, we've also seen growth in e-scooter ridership and participation in our e-scooter share program, which I can talk about a bit later. And a large number of trips and bike trips are from delivery workers. As you can see there, we have about 65,000 estimated workers in 2023, and I'm sure by now that number has grown. So some of the bike lanes you might see out there, if you look at this map from 2008, all those blue lines indicate bike routes that we've installed at that time. And up until last year, we've seen a tremendous amount of growth, both in like bike lanes, especially protected bike lanes, and our network has grown to include over 700 miles of protected bike lane, which still is the largest bike network in North America. And we'll continue to install safe infrastructure each year. Last year, we hit almost 30 miles of protected bike lanes as well. Here are a few examples of the type of infrastructure that we install. So we have a few different classifications. So the first photo you see on your top left, protected bike lanes. These are usually you might see them designated with green. They're fully separated cyclists from travel lanes where vehicles are. And that separation is either through parked vehicles, concrete barriers, some kind of flexible delineation, those like white posts you might see up there. And we find that with riders, this is more comfortable. We see just more participation by a variety of different ages and abilities. So that's a big reason why we try to prioritize that type of infrastructure. The next one, conventional bike lanes, are still designated areas for bikes on the roadway, usually just painted white lines between a travel lane and a parking lane. And they still connect to the network. They can connect you to parks, other destinations, to other protected bike lanes. So it's still a great tool. And one thing that Omar B referenced is the door zone. Here, our guidance when you are riding is, as long as you're staying like right at the center of the conventional bike lane, or like right where the symbol is, ideally that's about like 3 or a bit of feet away from the door zone. So it's still a safe place to ride. And then lastly, shared lanes. These don't take away any travel lanes. It's really just, as the word is mentioned, it's space on a roadway where bikes and vehicles are sharing the space. So cars are allowed to kind of drive over that, those markings, that's chevron, that shared area. And again, just like driving safely coexisting. We typically install these where we don't have room to install any of the other infrastructure that was mentioned. They're used as wayfinding or guidance for cyclists between, infrastructure, between destinations. And it's just a good way to alert drivers that they should expect cyclists on the road. And here are a few examples around the city where we've installed different infrastructure. So in Queens, Staten Island, Brooklyn, and Bronx. In addition to our on-street bike lanes, just wanted to let you all know that you can also take advantage of our off-street infrastructure. So these you might have seen are ones that are either along the water. These are our greenways. They might have been built through different ways, capitally over the years. It might have been an existing roadway that was kind of built out into a sidewalk. So we have these all around the city in Brooklyn, Queens, the Manhattan Waterfront Greenway. And right now we have a plan to continue to do this work along the Bronx and in Queens. Yeah. And why do we do bike lanes? We've studied these, and we have a few reports out there that you can reference. Overall, streets where bike facilities are present, we've seen a huge reduction in cycling risk, as well as crashes and fatalities overall. And that's because when we redesign the streets, we, as I mentioned, are reassigning places for each road user. We're visually narrowing the roadway, and in that sense, we're helping reduce speeding. And in some of the photos you might have seen, we do install like pedestrian islands, so we're shortening crossing distances. So overall, we feel like this is an effective tool to improve safety for all road users. And yeah, we don't stop there. I think we're always kind of monitoring our infrastructure, seeing ways that we can improve it and meet demand. So some things that we've been piloting over the last few years are ways to address the growth in a lot of micromobility usage. So e-bikes, e-scooters, the demand that we see from delivery workers. So some of the stuff that we've done is include like bike racks or bike parking spaces for delivery workers outside of like certain businesses. So in one photo, you can see there's a lot of space for these like cargo bikes, and it does take up some road space, but you know, we are still seeing a lot more demand by or need from these delivery workers. And one other thing is on the bottom right corner, here's an example of 9th Avenue, and it's much wider than some of our existing protected bike lanes. And the idea here is that we allow more space in the bike lane to allow for passing. And this type of wider bike lane, you know, if you're riding just like with a friend or recreationally, you are actually probably you have enough room to ride side by side. And so overall, your just comfort, your experience improves by just having more space. So this is something that we're hoping to expand. If you're near 3rd Avenue in Manhattan, you might see that there's a new design like this there as well. So yeah, these are just a few things that we're doing to accommodate that. And also these devices have like they have faster speeds. So I think just like you staying on one side and just allowing like others to pass you, it reduces stress overall while you're riding. Yeah, so I think we covered a few things about like owning your bike, but if you don't, that's okay. You can still participate. There is the New York City bike share system, you know, City Bike. Here's a photo of just like the service area. So it's expanded a lot over the years, and now it's kind of covering all of the Bronx, more of Queens and into Brooklyn. It's a network of shared bikes. So there are different stations where you can pick up and drop off a bike. And it is a membership run program, but there are discounted programs if you are a NYCHA resident, SNAP recipient, or credit union member. So you can find out more on their website or if you download their app. And another kind of new device out there, we have e-scooters. So there's an e-scooter share system. Similarly, there are 3 companies that are running this program. It's all kind of private. And we have we have Lime, Vio, and Bird. Currently, they are operating in parts of the East Bronx, and I think we have some info online about expansion in Queens as well. So similarly, you know, it's kind of membership run, but you can find more information about e-scooters on their website. And it's a mix of on-street, off-street parking. There are designated areas on the sidewalk, especially near like transit areas where people can pick up one of these scooters. And it's a great way to get between destinations, especially what we call like a last mile connection. So areas that aren't served by public transit very well. We wanted to share that DOT, we're spearheading, this is our 2nd year, a My Bike, My City campaign, which it's definitely promoting cycling for all ages and abilities, but particularly we want to highlight this campaign to encourage women, girls, transgender identifying individuals and gender non-conforming individuals and families to embrace cycling, have fun. And so throughout the year, we have these like palm cards, we'll be sharing out tips and other activities and events to encourage people to ride. So I think we have a few self-guided rides on our website that we can share a link to, that if you'd like to participate, these are ones that, you know, are drawn out by DOT and we've kind of vetted them. They're kind of really cool rides that you can pick up if it is your first time. And one invitation to everyone on this call. Next Friday, we have our Bike to Work Day. Usually this has been like a small DOT ride, but last year I think was the first time we opened it up to all city employees and we had a huge turnout. Here is a bit of info about where to meet us if you'd like to participate. And in the chat, we posted a registration link. We're basically kicking off a ride, encouraging everyone to participate on Bike to Work Day from each borough. And some of them, we have a few locations, including pickup locations that are closer for others on a ride. So yeah, check out the link, see if there are any locations close to you. I think it is all subject to like supervisor approval, but ideally we would ride and then meet at 9:15 a.m. for a group photo in Lower Manhattan. Yeah, so our New York City bike map will be released soon, and you can place orders if you'd like. It has a lot of information, like where all the bike lanes are in New York, all of the rules of the road that Omar B mentioned earlier, as well as like some e-bike info, and a map of all the bike shops in New York City. So it's a great resource. And I did also want to share that if you have any follow-up, if you have suggestions, issues, concerns, like anything transportation related, there are a few ways to contact us, DOT. So either through our borough commissioner's office, there's one commissioner per borough, through some of our feedback portals, directly through 311, either through their app or call in. And also just to like keep in touch, we have a Niceco's newsletter that you can sign up to hear about events. One thing that we didn't include in these slides is you can request bike parking, especially if it's like on a public sidewalk. So you can do so on our website as well. And yeah, I think that's it for me. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, thank you everybody for staying till the end. Just a couple of reminders of upcoming Workwell events coming up. So May is Mental Health Month, and so we have Food and Mood on May 13th at 12 p.m. Besides impacting your risk of diabetes, hypertension, and high cholesterol, the food you eat can also influence your mood and emotions. Register for Workwell NYC's Food and Mood webinar to learn more about the link between food and mental wellness. On May 20th at 7 p.m., connect, share, and support one another. Join Workwell's NYC Virtual Community Forum to navigate these changing times together. We had one back like about a month ago, and we heard your feedback, and since that one was during lunchtime, there's people who have different schedules. So we have one at 7 p.m. So hope more people can join, be able to share, and come and feel like you can be heard. On May 22nd and May 29th, June 5th, and June 12th, there's a Yoga Nidra deep relaxation series happening at 7 p.m. Yoga Nidra is an ancient practice that promotes relaxation, calms the nervous system, reduces stress, and boosts overall well-being. Join all 4 weekly sessions for a chance to win a wellness prize. Join at any point. It is not build upon each session. So if you miss May 22nd, you can still join June 5th, and you'll be able to still get the full effect of the deep relaxation sessions. Next slide. And then for National Bike Month, we have the ongoing helmet fittings and giveaways, which it was such a popular event. Thanks to DOT for doing the work they did on Monday. Yes. No, on Tuesday. Sorry. So New York City celebrates cycling by hosting events for Bike Month for the month of May. Please check out their DOT website under their events tab to see where else they're going to be near you, maybe. And there's one coming up on Saturday, actually. So please check it out. Take advantage of these times because, you know, we're the time that we live in, things are going up. May 16th, Bike to Work Day. Like you said, they want you guys to register in order to give you a customized location of where you want to bike from. They're trying to let people join from the 5 boroughs and be able to cross and like take that picture at 55 Water Street. So it's that kind of thing where you get to Bike to Work Day. Next slide. Please, if you want to know more about upcoming events, just like we did for all the bike DOT's bike events that we did so far, please sign up and use the QR code to .nyc.gov to our mailing list. So yeah. And next slide. And now we have a Q&A where Omar, well, the Omars, Sophie, and me will answer any questions that you might have.
Thank
Uh,
you. Thanks so much, Karen, and thanks to WorkWell for hosting us. So I saw a few questions come in through the chat, so thanks for participating. So let's answer this this first slide and rule about using pedestrian signals at signalized intersections, the go with walk rule that Omar mentioned earlier. I am going to just go to that slide real quick and we can talk a little bit more about it.
Yep. I'll start out by reminding everybody the laws. Remember, we have to stop at all red lights and stop signs. We have to ride in the direction of traffic, and we have to yield to pedestrians. So if we go to the next slide, the update to the law is Local Law 154. If we study this photograph, you are allowed to travel against the red light under certain conditions. First, that you slow down and you yield to the pedestrians that have the right of way. So that pedestrian signal on the left lets you go through the red light above you. We also have to make sure that there isn't any bicycle signal present. So on this 4th Avenue intersection, there is no bicycle signal. You'll see these where there's like a turn for a vehicle. There'll be like a green arrow. If there's like a green arrow situation, there'll be a red bicycle signal. You cannot go through that red light because the vehicle has a green light to turn. In this circumstance, in this photograph, while it is red light for you and the pedestrians can cross safely, you can proceed as long as there's no other vehicle present. So we have to still slow down. We have to yield to the pedestrians that are crossing the street. Doesn't mean you get to cut off the pedestrians crossing 4th Avenue. We have to be cautious with those pedestrians, and we have to be aware if there's any other vehicle that might be going through that intersection. For example, an officer, a fire truck, an ambulance. It's a red light for you, but you thought you could go. You still have to slowly go through the intersection and be cautious about how you go through that red light.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the main thing is this applies when you are riding in the direction of traffic. So in the direction that the pedestrians are crossing, that the car is moving. So not perpendicular. So if the if the pedestrians don't have the light, if they're crossing in front of you, you know, like if you're looking up forward and they're crossing left to right, you should be stopped. You should not go when pedestrians are crossing, like, you know, perpendicular to you. This is
Yeah, you gotta
direction of
yield to that
traffic.
pedestrian. Yep. I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you. And then we got a question about Columbus Circle, navigating Columbus Circle.
Ooh, yeah, let's pull up that slide because
Sure.
that one is easy with that beautiful slide.
I think there's
Uh,
one actually before about guides and rules, if this applies to all of New York or just in the city. Um, yeah, this is basically all the rules that Omar B kind of wrote out, applies to all of New York City, so all of our boroughs. Some might apply to New York State, but you know that it might be different.
Awesome. By looking at this photograph, I would tell you that this is a greenway. And if you come in through 8th Avenue, you're able to continue your greenway experience along the circle, along the green paint. Now, when you get to Columbus Circle and Broadway, that is where, if you read the Bike Smart book, they tell you about how to navigate intersections. My first suggestion is to cross like a pedestrian. So this photograph shows the cyclist using the pedestrian signal and the bicycle box to get across those 3 lanes of traffic. So that would be my first suggestion. If you're able to wait till the red light has stopped the vehicles behind you, alongside you, and now you can cross with the pedestrians outside of the crosswalk in your bicycle box, you'll see that these 3 cyclists are going to get right back on that paint and be able to continue their ride through Central Park South. If you continued on the circle, the same rule applies, at the next intersection with Central Park West, and the same rule applies at Broadway. Um, for those of you that are more experienced riders or looking to become more experienced, take a class with Bike New York. They do a lot of advanced classes where you can navigate the intersection like a driver and signal your intentions, scan, signal again, and then be able to switch lanes. Now, this is for everybody in the room. Put your cheek on your shoulder. When you put your face cheek on your shoulder, you are looking at your blind spot, whether you're driving or riding a bicycle. So if I look cheek to shoulder, I see there's nothing there. I'm going to signal and stay in control with my arm where I need to switch lanes. But after I signal, I have to check again to make sure it's still clear because somebody might be coming around the bend. So that's only for the experienced riders in the group. And for our drivers, we have to share the road. If you see somebody's trying to switch lanes, you got to give them some space. You can't just cut them off on the circle. We're yielding to those that are trying to get around just like everybody else.
Thanks, Omar Barrios. I see there's a question about free helmet for participating today. As Karen mentioned, there was an earlier city employee helmet giveaway, but don't worry if you missed that this week. If you go to the upcoming bike events website that's also posted in the chat, you'll be able to see other helmet giveaways we have coming up across the city, not just in Bike Month for May, but throughout the kind of biking season. So definitely check those out if there's one in your borough. That's for all New Yorkers, kids, adults. Just check them out and see the event details, and our helmet fitting team will be with you to get you a free helmet.
Yeah, I got an update for everybody. Tomorrow is looking like a go out in Queens for Councilmember Vicky Palladino. We're going to be out in Crocherome Park. So look forward to seeing everybody come out for their free helmet fitting. And even if you didn't participate today, you can still come to one of our events in the future.
Yes, and I see a question about the classes and free helmets. I believe the class on our end, the Bike New York class we're offering is part of a bike bonanza coming up, but you can also go to the Bike New York website and they have classes all over the 5 boroughs, throughout the year that you can take free learn to ride classes and up your skills the way that Omar Barrios has been telling us about. I also see there's a question about whether we plan to have bike lanes on Broadway north of 59th Street. As a project manager within the cycling and micromobility unit, I wanted to share that if you're interested in what is coming to your neighborhood in terms of bike infrastructure or any sort of DOT infrastructure planned, you can go to our current projects page on the DOT website, and that will have all of our latest presentation, not only for this year, but all of the public information available for previous years, where you can see kind of what projects we have coming up. We also encourage you to keep an eye on your local community board. That is where we often share our plans for upcoming bike infrastructure and safe streets. So definitely watch those spaces, the current projects page and your community board. Let's see, lots more questions. Okay. There's a question about generally churning when cars are turning or crossing a bike lane, when bikes have the right of way. Omar Barrios, I'm going to try and navigate to the slide with the mixing zone because I think that might be a good place to end for today. Let me see, but I think if you want to share any tips for just in general when cars are crossing.
Absolutely. So we have different intersection situations on this slide. My best advice to you, which is on especially the top 2 slides, is just to slow down. We have the vehicle coming into a shared space that you are also sharing. So as a cyclist, who has more to lose? We have to make sure that if they are in the blind spot area, remember, look at that blind spot for that truck and look at the car above it. Like, we want to make sure we distance ourselves because the driver may not have seen you. as they're trying to make that turn. And for the driver, you know, same advice. Hurry up and wait. You're going to have to stop at that intersection to make your turn because there's pedestrians crossing the street. So as a cyclist, I always say slow down and carefully go around the vehicle. If you're able to scan, signal your intentions and go around them, you know, you could avoid it. And at the top slide, you're going to have other drivers that are aggressive. That blue car at the top of the slide, they might have cut you off also, came out of nowhere. So what can you do? Make sure you proceed with caution, especially as the vehicles get bigger. You know, the trucks, the buses, don't get anywhere near them. You have a bigger blind spot, smaller mirrors, a lot happening as they're trying to make a wider turn. You know, we want to make sure we're especially cautious in that situation. So, you know, this is the danger that we're seeing at the intersection. Remember, we're seeing most of the crashes happen at the intersection because of the mixing zone.
Yeah, don't go in front. Go around.
I tend to do what the cyclist is doing on the top. So you're kind of on the inside and the driver can see you as they're turning. But it is a little bit more, I would say, of an advanced maneuver. So I think, you know, to Omar Barrios's tip to take Bike New York classes, not only just to learn to ride, but to learn to, you know, use your signals and confidently navigate the streets. It's a great way to learn.
I
Anyhow,
guess
oh, sorry, go for it.
one little thing, we didn't have a photo or an example here, but in some cases, the bike lanes are fully separating each direction. So sometimes the light is held for drivers and the bikes have the green to go. So there shouldn't be any conflict in some cases, or they might just have a head start and, you know, just to reduce some of that kind of conflict. And if you might see, I think on 3rd Avenue, where we might have these new pilot little bike signals just for bikes. So when you're out there, you know, notice them, wait till, you know, that light is green to proceed because it does prioritize your time.
Well, I think that's our time for today. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to our panelists, to Workwell for hosting us today. I believe the links from today's session will be sent out, as well as a recording of this webinar. Hope to see you all next Friday as part of Bike to Work Day. If you sign up at the link we send out, I will be sending you more info on start locations and logistics for that ride. So see you out on the streets, and thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great bike month.